Kia ora, ko Ivan Hodgetts tuku whenua, e kairahi aratika mō nā taiohi kuratura. So yeah, I'm the other Kerry Ryan, based down in Southland or Mirihiku, doing the similar work. What I'm going to talk about today is the work I've been doing with Mirihiku regeneration. Some of you may be familiar or aware that there's a discussion around whether or not the Tiwai aluminium smelter closes. That announcement a few years back led to some quite significant concern in the region around the future of our communities, and particularly having seen the devastating effects of things like the closure of the freezing works and such like sort of 30 years ago had a real massive impact on places like Bluff. So there's a real concern within some of the leadership of Ngāi Tahu and some of our upuku in regard to what that might mean for our communities and the effect it could have. So there's been a real emphasis and an initiative around thinking about the future of the region and what we can do to respond to the potential closure of the smelter. One of the products of that process has been the development of the possibility of a large hydrogen energy plant to be developed in Southland, which producing a significant amount of green hydrogen in the region. It's initially thinking as a replacement to the smelter. There's still a debate now about whether the smelter closes, so there could be an and situation resulting in quite a bit of development and growth in the region. My job inside of all of that has to be thinking about our young people and our adults and our local people and capability development, because there's not a lot of point in having development if your local people end up just serving the coffees to the people from elsewhere that are the engineers and such like. So how do we make sure our young people, all our young people, our whānau Māori, Pākehā, Pacific and so on, all our young people have those opportunities to build the capability necessary to take up the opportunities that will emerge in our future. Kind of a tricky thing to figure out and how to do that. And just to talk about that, what I'd like to start with is, can everyone just raise your hand for me, please? Now, keep your hand up if you knew what you were going to do when you left school. Keep your hand up if you did what you thought you were going to do when you left school. Keep your hand up if you're still doing it. Interesting, right? Well, the core paradigm in a lot of what we do in the area of careers is a thing I call decision guidance, which is basically trying to get all of you to know what you're going to do for a job when you leave school, and yet all of our lived experience tells us that most people won't do that. So why do we adopt a paradigm that tends to focus on what are you going to do when you leave school? I think that the thing that's really important, particularly when I'm working for an iwi organisation, is what I call developmental guidance, or an approach that focuses on how do we help our young people and their whānau build a shared understanding around their sense of how they will start their adult life, what that will look like for them, give them the opportunity to change their mind if they need to. Some of the things that have been talked about already this morning, the SORIC example, Mike from South Otago and what he was describing, they're fantastic examples of how you allow young people to reality test pathways before they make a decision and they find themselves fixed in something, having left school, that they don't like. So there's a whole lot of really good ways that we can figure out how we support our young people to build that sense of who they are, where they want to be, and how they can get there. So how that works within the context of Mirihiku Regen is we have these 4 po, and the idea is that our education and training strategy underpins those po through this idea of building capability. And that links to the idea of now 4, because we're thinking about how do we prepare our young people for the future of learning and work. Now it's learning and work because you are going to have to continue learning through your lives like we all have, because we've made changes in the nature of the work we do, how we live our lives, where we live and so on, and we've had to pick up new skills and understandings in order to make those changes. So those things are entirely normal, happens for all of us, but how do we normalise that in our understanding for our young people? Another good example of why that really matters is the current discussions around a hydrogen plant and changes in Southland started 2 years ago. By the time that whole process plays out, it'll be over a decade through which that occurs. That means that the entire under 30 workforce in the region is currently school students. So that's another reason why we're taking the approach we are, and I'm sort of describing things in the way I am. This is a general sort of framework we've developed around it, and below that is the three kind of elements of what we're doing in our program. In this here, there's three, I think, phases to building that sense of identity and hope and purpose for a young person. And they are that they need to build a sense of an awareness of the world of work and adult life. Because there's that idea, you don't know what you don't know. So all the kind of activities that have been described already today, and I think Stephen Geddes from TEC is going to talk about some other examples, activities that allow young people to just see the world around them and what's out there and what's possible without having to make a decision about what might be the thing for them. Once they get that, and it's actually something that should be happening from year 7, much earlier than we tend to do this. We do a lot of this kind of work from about year 10, 11 through, when people are about to leave school and they've got to pick something, because at the last minute, oh, I'm going to leave school, what am I going to do? If we start doing that earlier, we prepare our young people much better for thinking about that next phase of understanding, well, what's my orientation to the world of work and adult life? What might that look like for me? Where might I start? And then the third piece being building a pathway to that future and that kind of mapping out how that's going to work. In terms of school leavers, Kerry and I do a lot of work around understanding the 4 cohorts of school leavers. And I think with the young people talking here today, really important point made there. Young people leaving school to go to a job is not a bad thing. If that's the best option for them to learn and progress, there is nothing wrong with that. The one that we do have a problem with is it used to be called NEETs. We now like to use the term YAL, youth at risk of limited employment. That's the young people that are falling out of our systems early, and then we're having to catch them up and rescue them at a later date. And those are the ones that we see in the churn with unemployment and such like, and they have a lifetime of limited employment opportunities until, if there's someone like me, I left school at 16 and then went to university in my 20s, and so you kind of can change direction and such like. But that's a very hard thing to do. So it's far better if we can capture those young people and pull them through. So the work we're looking to do focuses on that. And what that looks like is this pathway planning framework. So what we've developed is a program of learning to embed in our schools. We've also just had approval for this to be accredited as a micro-credential at level 2 for 8 credits. And the idea in this is these are the things that are being described around. You can be at school and you can be in a trades academy. So I think it's about 340 young people in Otago have a day or 2 a week at the Polytech under the Trades Academy. You have at least that number doing gateway workplace learning placements as a part of their NCEA. You can do other things like school, Polytech, and have a job. So you can actually physically be in a paid job. There's a whole lot of things you can do. So the idea of this program is to have 3 phases. The first phase is to understand how much understanding there is between young people and their families. Second piece is this program of learning around a young person, figuring out their pathway and mapping it out. And then the third phase is supporting and brokering it happening before they leave school. So just to finish up, the two outcomes we're focused on, every young person should have a pathway plan, and that plan should start before school finishes. Because if it doesn't start before school finishes, they're much less likely to actually realise their intentions and their aspirations. Kia ora.